When I was in primary school, I was deeply afraid of ghosts, a fear that was fueled by my grandfather's revelation that the Zudeli neighborhood where we lived had once been a mass grave. In the early 1980s, I vividly remember how heavy rays would flood the alley, forcing us to raise the furniture in the downstairs rooms to keep it dry. For us children, these floods were a source of joy. We would sit in wooden foot buckets, using wooden slippers as oars, to row around as if we were in boats. However, I was always hesitant to stand in that murky water. One particular flood left a lasting impression on me. While I was downstairs to relieve myself, I stood in the water and felt what I was certain was a hand grabbing my foot. Terrified, I burst into tears. The adults dismissed it as a hallucination, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was real. This incident only deepened my fear, yet it also sparked a growing curiosity. I began seeking out any books that touched on such mysterious phenomena. One of my favorites was a children's book called Golden Key, which told the story of a group of teenagers who embarked on an outdoor adventure, discovered a human skull, and studied it. The blend of fear and fascination stayed with me, shaping my childhood imagination.
However, an old criminal police officer once told me a story about a golden key. He said that during the Great Movement, many people's homes were searched. In Yaoshui Lane, there once lived an old man named Bai, whom others called Teacher Bai. He was a Hui Muslim and knew martial arts. So, at that time, Master Bai was considered a folk martial artist with many disciples. Some people said that Master Bai's life was shrouded in mystery, and even his disciples didn't know 7 or 8 points about him. It was this Master Bai who was reported as a reactionary by a group of Red Guards. They went to overthrow him, paraded him through the streets, and ransacked his home. Master Bai's home was very small and shabby, but that year, it was rumored that a strange golden key was found there. A series of events unfolded around this golden key. At the time, the Red Guards demanded that Master Bai explain where the golden key came from and what it was used for. Master Bai, already 70 years old, shook his white beard and said that an old friend had entrusted it to him for safekeeping many years ago. As for its purpose, he claimed he didn't know. The old criminal police officer recounted that the Red Guards beat the old man. Despite being a skilled martial artist, Master Bai didn't fight back. They locked him up for a few days before releasing him. By then, the old man had been starving for several days. Upon his release, Master Bai asked for the golden key to be returned to him. A Red Guard leader named Li told him that the golden key was missing. Master Bai became agitated and insisted that it had been entrusted to him by a friend and wasn't his to lose. He demanded to know how it could simply disappear, and warned that whoever took it would face consequences. After all, the old man was elderly, and upon returning home, he fell ill. The old criminal police officer mentioned that in his youth, he had learned some kung fu from Teacher Bai and considered himself his apprentice. In Master Bai's twilight years, he went to visit him, carrying with him the memory of the golden key and the mysteries surrounding it. Speaking of the golden key, the old man recounted that it all began when he was young and working as an apprentice in Yulin, Gansu. In 1931, Master Bai was an apprentice in a gold shop. That year, Gansu was struck by a severe drought, leading to widespread famine and a critical shortage of water. One day, a man who appeared to be a monk collapsed at the doorstep of the gold shop. Master Bai, who was always eager to help others in his youth, rescued the monk and brought him back to the shop to rest. After the monk regained consciousness, he explained that he had been walking for several days and had run out of provisions. He expressed his gratitude to Master Bai for saving his life. Despite being a Hui Muslim and a follower of Islam, Master Bai got along well with the monk. The monk shared that he had become a monk at Qingliang Mountain as a child, and that, on his master's deathbed, he was entrusted with an unfulfilled wish to travel to the western regions to meet an old friend. Because Master Bai had saved his life, the monk also candidly shared some of his strange experiences. The exact details of the story, however, were only partially understood by the old criminal police officer, as he had heard it second-hand from Master Bai. Later, it seemed that before the monk departed, he mentioned that he was planning to join the army. He then gave Master Bai a bowl used in a painting studio, asking him to keep it safe and promising to retrieve it later. The two parted ways at that time. A few years later, Master Bai also left Gansu and came to Shanghai to make a living. The old criminal police officer recalled asking Master Bai how the golden key had come into his possession. Master Bai explained that there was a hidden layer inside the glass of the bowl, and the key was concealed within that layer. The key was very small, but shaped like a snake, and its sats remained a mystery. The old criminal police officer found the story fascinating at the time, but now the key had likely been taken by someone among the Red Guards. Master Bai emphasized that he had always kept his promises, and though he didn't know where the monk had gone after joining the army, he felt it was his duty to safeguard the item for his old friend. The old criminal police officer mentioned that Master Bai passed away a few months later. However, just 1 month after his death, the death of another person unexpectedly revealed the whereabouts of the golden key. In those days, we had daily meetings and study sessions, and being a criminal police officer was also exhausting. One day, just after an ideological meeting, a member of the public reported that a Red Guard leader had died inexplicably in the home of a woman named Mo Xiaoli. The Red Guard leader was called Du Xinfeng. It was said that he suddenly died with foam at the mouth while eating lunch. In those days, the death of a Red Guard leader was treated as a political incident. The criminal police team immediately sent someone to Mo Xiaoli's home. Mo Xiaoli lived at No. 7, Lane 28, Shanxi North Road, which was an old-fashioned shikumin house. Mo Xiaoli was a nurse and was in a relationship with Du Xinfeng. However, Mo Xiaoli was said to have been married and divorced. She was very beautiful and often maintained improper relationships with some unmarried young men, so her reputation was not very good. Du Xinfeng was a more prestigious Red Guard leader in the district, so the case required thorough investigation. The criminal police entered Mo Xiaoli's room. The room was filled with the smell of alcohol, and the body had been covered with a sheet. Mo Xiaoli was crying on the side. The old criminal police officer asked what had happened before Du Xinfeng died. Mo Xiaoli said that Du Xinfeng had come to her house for lunch at noon, drank a bottle of white wine, and then flirted with her. She said that the house suddenly became dark, and she thought it was going to rain, so she went to collect clothes. Then she heard Du Xinfeng suddenly scream, and there seemed to be a whirlwind in the room. She turned her head, and the wind blinded her eyes, making it difficult to see Du Xinfeng's condition clearly. Then she seemed to hear Du Xinfeng shout, "Don't haunt me." After that, everything stopped, and she found Du Xinfeng foaming at the mouth and lying on the floor, his eyes still wide open. Mo Xiaoli, being a nurse, stepped forward to check his breath and found that Du Xinfeng had died. Mo Xiaoli cried and said, "Comrade, you have to believe me. Du Xinfeng wasn't killed by me. He was killed by someone else." The forensic identification came out 3 days later. Du Xinfeng died of a ruptured cerebral blood vessel. There were no other signs of poisoning or trauma. The old criminal police officer said that the case was settled at that time. As for what Mo Xiaoli said, it was dismissed as her being overly frightened. Later, Omar, who had searched houses with Du Xinfeng, told the old criminal police officer that Du Xingfeng had recently made a small fortune. The old criminal police officer asked what had happened. Ma told him that a few months ago, when Du Xingfeng searched the house of an old man named Bai, he had found some gold and sold it on the black market for money. The old criminal police officer thought, "Isn't this the golden key that Master Bai mentioned?" So he began to doubt the cause of Du Xingfeng's death. After experiencing incidents like Yu Xingguo's, the old criminal police officer started to believe that there was indeed the power of ghosts and gods in this world. He went to Mo Shaoli's house again and asked about the situation at that time. Mo Shaoli said that Du Xingfeng had shown her a golden key and promised to draw a necklace for her, but he never fulfilled the promise. The old criminal police officer asked, "Do you know who Du Xingfeng sold the key to?" Mo Shaoli said that Du Xingfeng had a friend named Lao Yao who should know, so the old criminal police officer asked for Lao Yao's address. This old Yao lived in Zhangkongli. When the old criminal police officer walked into Zhangkongli, he saw people coming and going with smiles on their faces. The old criminal police officer asked, "Which family in the alley is holding a funeral for an old man?" Seeing that he was a policeman, the other person hurriedly said it was the Yao family at number 17. Last night, their son had fallen into an uncovered gutter on his way home and died. It was truly a tragedy. The old criminal police officer hurried to the door of number 17, only to see that a mourning hall had been set up. Inside, an old woman was crying bitterly, and many neighbors were helping to console her. The old criminal police officer did not go in. When he left Zhangkongli, he knew in his heart that old Yao was also dead, and the clue to the key had been lost. Was all this really just a coincidence? The old criminal police officer thought that generally, this kind of gold and silver jewelry often circulated underground, and there might still be some clues. So he went back to the bureau and looked up several listed speculators, one of whom was a habitual offender nicknamed Scar. The old criminal police officer decided to ask this guy Scar. So he asked the comrades at Jiaozhou police station to bring Scar in. Scar was about 50 years old. Because he had a scar on his ear, people called him Scar. According to him, he had worshipped the ancestor of the Green Gang before liberation, but it was generally known that he often resold things, so Scar was considered a wealthy man in that era. As soon as Scar entered the door, he bowed his head and handed over a Guangren cigarette. "Comrade, I've been studying recently and haven't done anything illegal." The old criminal police officer asked him if he knew about someone selling a golden key. Scar smiled cunningly and said, "How would I know about that?" The old criminal police officer knew that he wouldn't tell the truth without some pressure. "Scar, I know your past very well. You'd better tell the truth, otherwise I won't be so polite." Scar hurriedly said, "Let me think about it. It seems there was such a thing. Old Yao from Zhenghongli showed it to me. Later it seems it was passed on to an old mute." The old criminal police officer asked what the old mute's name was. Scar said he heard it was a man named Jin, who lived in Hong Kong. The old criminal police officer asked Scar where exactly he lived. Scar said that this old mute often asked them to buy things, and he had done business with him before. He lived in Lane 20, Huachang Road. Huachang Road is a branch road next to Baosheng Road in Hong Kong. A long time ago, there was a local village here, and there was also a tributary of the Suzhou River. Later, many outsiders gathered around this village, and gradually the original appearance of this place was replaced by shanty towns. The old criminal police officer went back to the bureau to get a letter of introduction and went to the Baosheng Road police station, where Huachang Road is located. Lane 20 of Huachang Road is close to a place called Tiantangang Road. The old criminal police officer walked into Lane 20 and asked about the old man Jin, but strangely, no one in the lane knew about the old man Jin. The old criminal police officer walked to the corner of Huachang Road and Tiantong Road, saw a cigarette holder shop, and asked the owner. The owner said that there was an old mute here, but his surname wasn't Jin, because almost no one knew his surname, and he lived in Tiantangan. Tiantangan no longer exists, but in the 1970s, it was still located on Tiantangang Road. The old criminal police officer walked to Tiantangang Road and finally found out where Tiantangang was. Tangtong Temple is a small temple with 3 courtyards. The walls are mottled, but it's clear that this place was once quite popular. The old criminal police officer wondered why an old mute man would live in a nunnery. When the wooden door of Tangtong Temple creaked open, there was a large incense burner inside. Many revolutionary slogans were written on the incense burner, including the words Revolutionary Committee Proclamation. The first courtyard enshrined a Maitreya Buddha, but the paint on the statue had peeled off, making the happy Maitreya's smile appear somewhat hideous. Walking into the second courtyard, the old criminal police officer noticed that the statue of the Tathagata Buddha in Tangtong Hall was gone. In its place, on the lotus platform, there was a small statue that looked like Guanyin, but strangely, it was covered with red cloth. The area around the lotus platform seemed like someone's living space. On a small bed, someone appeared to be sleeping under a quilt. The old criminal police officer went up and pushed the quilt, but the person inside didn't respond. The old criminal police officer thought, "Why is this old mute sleeping so soundly?" But at that moment, the doors and windows of Tangtong Temple suddenly closed, plunging the entire room into complete darkness, making it impossible to tell east from west or north from south. The old criminal police officer took a deep breath. As he had heard people talk about ghost walls, he reached out to grab the quilt, but the place where the quilt should have been was empty. A ray of light shone from the direction of the roof, and the statue on the lotus platform was still there. A breeze blew, and the red cloth fell. The old criminal police officer looked closer and saw that the statue was indeed Guanyin, but the head was that of a horse. Horse-headed Guanyin. The old criminal police officer had heard before that this kind of Buddha statue seemed to be worshipped only in Tibetan Tantric Buddhism. The old criminal police officer thought to himself, "Where am I now? Am I still in Tangtong Temple? Where is the old mute?" At that moment, he saw an old man with a hunched back, standing not far away. He looked very distant, yet also very close. The old man's mouth didn't move, but a voice came. "Comrade criminal police, I can see you're a kind person. Don't ask about the key anymore. Just pretend you never knew about it." The old criminal police officer said loudly, "This is my master, Mr. Bad's possession. I have the obligation to return it to its rightful owner. Return it to its rightful owner." Ha ha ha. The old man's mouth still didn't move, and he didn't even have any expression, but his voice could be heard. The old criminal police officer wondered, "Who is this person?" The voice continued, "The key belongs to the Zhangdan living Buddha, and your master Bai was merely keeping it for him." The old criminal police officer asked, "Did you kill those people?" The voice replied, "A greedy person's heart is worthy of death. Besides, if the sacred artifact falls into the hands of such people, it would not be a good thing." The old criminal police officer said, "Then who are you?" The voice said, I am just a servant of the living Buddha. The old criminal police officer had many more questions to ask, but the old man waved his hand, signaling him not to continue. Then the old criminal police officer heard a lot of sounds similar to monks chanting beside him. The hunchbacked old man actually followed the light and disappeared into the darkness of the roof. After a long time, someone pushed the old criminal police officer. It took him a while to regain his senses, and he found himself still standing at the door of the rude shop. The man who pushed him asked, "Comrade, what's wrong with you?" The old criminal police officer looked around in confusion and turned to see that the rude shop had been sealed. The old criminal police officer asked, "Where is the boss?" The man smiled and said, "Comrade, you don't know. The boss of this shop was found to be a counter-revolutionary last month, and the shop has been closed for a long time." The old criminal police officer was bewildered. Who was the monk that Master Bai had met? What was the relationship between the old mute and him? He decided to go back to Tang Tung Temple once more. The old criminal police officer walked along the road he had taken last time to Tintang Temple. He kept thinking about Ye Qiangguo. He remembered that Ye Qiangguo and Yuan Haishen also had similar magical abilities. Could it be that he had encountered such a strange person again this time? The wooden door of Tintang Temple was still ajar. Entering the temple, he saw the large incense burner and the ferociously smiling Maitreya Buddha. Once more, a hunchbacked old man was sweeping the floor. The old criminal police officer quickly walked up, grabbed the old man, and said, "Let's see where you run now." The old man looked up at the old criminal police officer in confusion, made an "ah" sound, and then indicated that he could neither hear nor speak. The old criminal police officer said angrily, "If you don't explain clearly today, you're coming back to the bureau with me." The old mute looked at the old criminal police officer with a wronged expression. The old criminal police officer dragged him to the hall at the back. The hall was empty, and even the small Buddha statue on the platform was gone. The mute gestured and drew, but the old criminal police officer couldn't understand what he meant, suspecting the old mute was playing dumb. So the old criminal police officer gestured and asked if he knew how to read, and the old mute nodded. The old criminal police officer wrote the words, "Golden Key," and the old mute wrote with a pen. The key was lost. Last night, the old criminal police officer continued to write. "Why did you buy that key?" The mute wrote, "Because it's not a key, but a Buddhist instrument, and it's very valuable." The old criminal police officer wrote, "What instrument?" The mute wrote, "Ni Tianjiren." The old criminal police officer wrote, "How did you know?" The mute suddenly laughed, and the old criminal police officer noticed that the entire Tintang Temple began to collapse, the walls around it falling, and the whole earth shaking. Was there an earthquake in Shanghai? The old criminal police officer said that at that moment, everything felt like a dream. I asked the old criminal police officer what happened next, and he said, "Do you know what incredible means?" I said, "Isn't it just something unimaginable?" He said, "It turns out that incredible is a place, and that place is called the incredible realm heaven." I asked him, "Does such a place really exist in the world?" The old criminal police officer said, "Let me tell you about this incredible realm heaven." After the collapse of Tintang Temple, the old criminal police officer found himself standing on a snowy plain, but the old mute was gone. He said he saw a monk-like man walking not far away. He wanted to call out to the monk, but the monk seemed not to hear him. He followed the monk to a mountain wall, where there was a temple. A rope and a basket hung from above, and the monk was pulled up in the basket. The old criminal police officer wanted to follow, But at that moment he noticed the old mute standing behind him. The old mute raised his hand, and his body flew up. Soon he arrived at the platform. Looking down, it was still a snowy plain, but it was very far away. The platform was an entrance. Inside the mountain wall, the entrance was a hall. Many Tibetan lamas were chanting scriptures. In the middle, a man sat on a throne, and his appearance was exactly that of the old mute. The old mute smiled and waved to the old criminal police officer, who walked in and saw that the entire cave was magnificent. The old criminal police officer asked, "Excuse me, what is this place?" A monk beside him spoke a language he couldn't understand, but as if there was a translator, the old criminal police officer actually understood the meaning. He heard the monk say, "This is the Bardo realm, the incredible realm heaven." What is the Bardo? The Bardo is the period of time after a person dies. The old criminal police officer asked, "Am I dead?" The monk replied, "You were just sent here by the living Buddha. Here you can understand the cause and effect of defying heaven. Once you know, you will no longer be obsessed." In Tibetan Tantric Buddhism, there are two sects that practice Bardo salvation, the flower sect and the black sect. The monk told the old criminal police officer that they were from the black sect. One branch of the black sect moved to Mount Wutai in Shanxi during the reign of Emperor Kangxi to preach. In the end, due to the prosperity of the yellow sect, both the black sect and the flower sect declined, leaving only the monk rescued by Master Bai in Mount Wutai.